I've been a part of firms that had 100 or more people. We don't want to be one of those. Most plaintiff firms who have tried to grow very large have had great difficulty in maintaining folks. You have difficulty in maintaining quality of work. And so our growth has been in higher and higher end cases.
Hey everyone, Bo Royal here, co-founder and CEO of Pareto Legal, a marketing agency that helps injury lawyers increase their profits with digital strategy, online advertising, and analytics. You're listening to the Pareto Legal Podcast, where we feature world-class attorneys, entrepreneurs, and legal experts. And today I'm joined by Jeff Miller, founding partner at Miller Kory Rowe LLP, a Phoenix-based law firm that focuses on severe injury and elderly abuse cases. In this episode, we'll learn more about Jeff's background and how he's been able to grow his practice. Jeff, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Bo. I appreciate it.
Leading off, Jeff, with the first question, can you talk a little bit about your background and how you ended up becoming founding partner at Miller Kory Rowe?
I decided that I wanted to be a lawyer, perhaps too early in life, but I knew from high school on that that's what I wanted to do. What I thought I wanted to do was to be a Wall Street lawyer. And so I went back east and I worked for some Wall Street law firms while in law school, and ultimately decided that that was the most boring thing I had ever done in my life, and that I wanted to do trial work. And so I ended up coming back to Arizona, which was not the plan, and working for an insurance defense firm where I received a lot of very good training early on in litigation and trial work. I tried my first case very shortly after being admitted to the bar and found that I enjoyed that a great deal. But as the next several years went on, I realized that my heart wasn't on the insurance side of the ledger, and that the few small plaintiffs' cases I'd been able to handle while I was at the first law firm were more emotionally satisfying and more personal, and that I wanted that personal contact. So I ultimately joined what was then Rausch, McCracken Guerrero, a very successful small Phoenix personal injury firm. And I was the youngest person at that time. I'm now the oldest person in my firm, but I was the youngest person at that time. And we did that for a number of years and had a lot of fun doing large cases and not focusing on volume, but in acquiring the right kind of cases. So when my older partner started retiring, I wanted to continue in the same vein and asked some of the folks that I was working with if they wanted to start a new firm. And we did that. And that was the origins of what ultimately became Miller Kory Rowe.
And how many years ago was that?
I left defense practice in 1996 and started with Rausch McCracken January 1 of 1997. So I've been doing exclusively plaintiff work since 1997.
But going from that firm then to founding your own firm, what year did that occur?
The predecessor firm, we've gone through some name changes as we've changed partners, but this same basic firm has existed since 2010.
Okay, got it. So coming up on 15 years now. What are some of the key strategies over the last 15 years that you've deployed to help grow your firm? Because if memory serves me correctly, I believe you're a 4-attorney practice now, and you obviously have a support staff as well. What are the things that you've done over the last 10 to 15 years to propel that growth?
Well, a couple of things. One is that we've had some very good results in trial and acquired a good reputation among lawyers who do similar work, but not necessarily the same exact work we do. We do complex personal injury. We do medical malpractice. What has grown significantly has been our elder abuse and vulnerable adult practice, which is a niche practice, but one that's getting bigger because of all of the elderly folks now, myself included, who are coming of age and beginning to have to think of those issues, and unfortunately are not receiving all the care they deserve. So one of the things we do is we speak. We go out and we speak at seminars. I did the trucking law seminar for the state bar for a number of years. and have done a lot of trucking work. My partner, Gabe Corey, and I teach at the University of Arizona Medical School as assistant professors of practice, and we teach elder abuse to people who are studying to become doctors. And our partner, Terry Rowe, is on several state bar committees. And what happens is that as you have all of your people out there doing things that are not necessarily the direct practice of law, but being introduced to the community, it's no one person who's bringing in all of the business. And instead, all three of us are bringing in business. I think that's been the most responsible thing for our growth has simply been our exposure to the community, doing the unique kinds of things that we do. We get a lot of referrals from defense lawyers who refer family and friends to us after we feel like we've taken money away from them. When they have an injury or they have a concern about elder abuse, we often get that call.
I assume those networking and speaking opportunities have been fruitful from a referral perspective. Roughly what percentage of the cases your firm is opening today are coming from referrals versus your own marketing efforts?
It's probably about 50-50. Doing what we do, where each one of us is responsible for 10 to 15 cases max. We can't handle volume. We had a short period where we made an attempt to also handle volume and have a lawyer work on volume. And for us, that was a nightmare. And so most of the traditional means of acquiring cases flood you with volume. And out of that, we're not going to take 98% of those calls, and yet you have to staff for it, and you have to weed through all of those, and all of those people take the same amount of time to tell their story, as they should, as somebody who's been through something more catastrophic. And so a lot of the usual ways of putting yourself out there is money that's not well spent for us. When companies make pitches to us to purchase advertising and they will send us 1,000 leads a month, that's my worst nightmare, is 1,000 leads a month. For me, I need 20 leads a month, maybe 30 leads a month, and we'll take 2 or 3. We have some very good firms that we work with that when the cases get past kind of the initial screen, we work with other cases and we refer them to cases that we think are good cases, but just are not something that is going to be one of our 10 or 15 cases. So we develop relationships that way. Those law firms in turn refer the cases back that are not their type of cases. And so we get a lot of referrals from volume practice lawyers who would be bogged down by that case that takes 3 years but is worth $3 million.
Right. So I think it's fair then to classify your firm as more of a niche boutique type of law practice and one that's not, like, as you mentioned, focused on, volume cases. How much time have you put into, defining your accept criteria, the cases that you do accept? Is that something that you have a very clear playbook for and something that you've handed to your intake team so that they know very clearly the things that they should be saying yes and no to?
We do. And we have an intake manager who is the first line for everything that comes in. And she is not a lawyer, but now knows our criteria to such extent that first thing on the memo that gives us the facts of the case will be, I think this is probably an accept. I think this is probably a decline. And she's right a significant portion of the time, but she gives us enough information that very quickly we can read through it and say, well, I'd like to hear more about that. Let's get some medical records. Let's talk to these folks. Because otherwise we would spend all day, every day reading through intakes. And that takes you away from actually doing lawyer work and doing more complex work that hopefully leads to higher returns for the clients that you do take.
Right. Exactly. I wanted to ask about some of the challenges that your firm's faced over the years. Can you talk a little bit about some of the roadblocks or obstacles that you've had to overcome while scaling your practice?
Some of it has been trying to find that magic way of only seeing the cases that you want to see. That's been a function of time as much as anything else. And our website is focused on what we do. We try not to drive people away with our website, but we really focus on what we do. All of our SEO is oriented towards the keywords that we really care about. That took quite a bit of time. I'm sure you know that it's a constant battle to stay in the algorithm for Google and with some of the search engines. And so we stopped a long time ago trying to do any of that ourselves. And we now pay for people who are more than worth their while to assist us in doing those things. And the thing that we've done and discovered we had to do is when they stop doing them, we have to change. And we've had to change services 4 or 5 times. SEO services get bought up by other SEO services. Sometimes the service goes up, but more often it goes down. So it's finding that mix of people who understand you, who are not finding services that are not trying to put 10% off coupons on your website, which is something we've been offered and something that would really rub people we're looking for the wrong way. I am sure that there is a market where that makes a difference, but it's not our market. So those kind of things they've been roadblocks when we've either been transferred to a service that has done a poor job and treated us as just one of their thousands of clients, all of whom are in competition with us, versus finding ones that are hungry and willing to do the work.
I think that's a great answer. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask about client retention and satisfaction. Over the last 15 years, what lessons have you learned about client retention and satisfaction that have contributed to your firm's success?
A couple. One thing that I've learned from some of the lawyers who advertise quite a bit and refer us cases is that early response is incredibly important. When people call in, they are probably not just calling you, they are calling 10 other people. So if it's that kind of a case, and that happens particularly in the world of automobile accident cases, if it's a catastrophic case of the kind that we would do because of the damage, because of the complications, if it involves a commercial truck, it won't wait until Monday. And so, we will get on our cell phones, and when an intake comes in or a message comes in regarding a case, it goes to all 4 lawyers and 24 hours a day. And one of the 4 of us will basically say, got it, and make the call and try and find out if we can be of assistance to people. So we've learned that from more volume-oriented practices. Most of our cases, though, come from either lawyers who know that we do elder abuse significantly, we teach it, and they are not in that field of practice, or referrals from former clients. So what we do in all of those respects is we give very, very personal service. The first person that a random caller may talk to is the intake manager, but if it gets past the intake manager, they're talking to one of us. And if they're getting an email in the middle of the night saying, I see you emailed the website, I'm interested in talking to you, it's from one of us. It's not from a chat bot or something that will give an automatic response. We respond to those personally if it looks like something that we would do. And if there's anything that I think that we do exceptionally well with our clients is treat them as human beings and they know us, we know them, they aren't a number. Even I can still keep track of 10 or 15 folks at one time, whereas when I did a defense practice 30 years ago, you'd have 200 insureds and litigation files, and honest to goodness, you couldn't remember them all.
Jeff, how do you ensure consistent growth while maintaining a high level of service quality? So obviously over the last 15 years, your practice has grown. How have you done that while making sure that you are still giving clients a very high quality service?
I've been a part of firms that had 100 or more people. We don't want to be one of those. And most plaintiff firms who have tried to grow very large have had great difficulty. You had difficulty in maintaining folks. You have difficulty in maintaining quality of work. And so where our growth has been in higher and higher end cases Whereas we may have taken what we assessed to be $100,000 case when we first started, this firm 14, 15 years ago. We now have the luxury of saying no to those. We place them with somebody who still wants those cases and that we know will do a good job. And that's 4 or 5 law firms that we're comfortable placing cases with. And we remain involved. If we do a joint representation, we are actively available for that. But that's enabled us to take more cases and then do joint representations with other law firms on the ones that aren't quite the monster cases that we now have the luxury of getting on a pretty regular basis. So rather than grow by humans, simply the quality of our cases has grown. And it's given us the opportunity to do referring, which until the last 5 years or so was really not a very significant part of our practice.
It's really interesting because I think a lot of our listeners are accustomed to hearing about firms that are growing with more of that volume mindset, but you've kind of gone about this in a more contrarian fashion in that your growth has stemmed from simply niching down and having more clarity on the type of case that you want, which, obviously a byproduct of that is you're saying no to increasingly more cases, which I know is easier said than done, because I'm sure there's been instances where you're scratching your head wondering, this could be a lucrative case for us, but it's really not in our sweet spot. It's not in the, the bullseye zone, so to speak. Right. So I guess for some of our listeners that have kicked around the idea of niching down further, can you talk about how you've still been able to predictably build your pipeline, even though you are going more niche? I think that's probably a fear for some firms, is that, if we're going to niche down, I'm going to go from 30 cases a month, maybe down to 5 cases a month. And, God forbid, I lose a referral partner or some other competitor comes in offering the same unique type of positioning. I'm going to be, for lack of a better word, you're going to be screwed, right? So I guess, how have you been able to generate a predictable pipeline while still niching down, if that question makes sense?
It certainly is a reasonable fear for people to have and the need to plan for. And there were, in our first days of really trying to limit ourselves to our ideal cases that we could go beat the heck out of and maximize the value, we worried about it. But especially with our referral partners, who we would say no to a lot. And you worry about that your referring lawyers are, I got a guy over here who says yes all the time, and these folks say no most of the time. That's maybe the scariest moment in all of this. And the thing that changed it for us was we started sending, the referring lawyers large checks, and they would have sent similar cases to some other lawyer, and they would have received a much smaller check. So once we established with some credibility that if we take it, it's because it's a good case and because we think we're going to do well on it, which means you're going to do well on it. And so, yes, we'll say no. And God bless if you can place them somewhere else and you still make something. But the reason we can make more money on a particular case is because we're not trying to do 100 of them. We're trying to get 100 times what the value might be of this one case. And then referral partner, your share of that is going to be more than you're used to getting. It's opposite of the way you might think about it, where, you just, I don't dare say no. And I'm sure along the way that there have been some referring lawyers who have said, these guys just don't take enough cases. And I've got a guy over here who will take everything that I send him. And that's just been a cost of doing business. I mean, we've seen some of those people come back later and start referring again, and we suspect that they tried somebody else and they saw what the results were. And we take it all seriously. We take it all really personally. These people, because we don't have a lot of them, they become like family, and we go fight for them like family. And you just can't do that when you have 500 cases, 1,000 cases. You have to do it differently. And so we're not critical of volume lawyers for doing it. That's their model, and they can get extremely good at doing a good job on what might be a $15,000 case, but they give it the appropriate level of attention. Our problem when we tried to do that was that we were giving $1 million attention to a $15,000 case, and it made no sense at all. And we don't know how to do it another way. And so we just stopped doing it and found who did those cases well, get them to them just immediately. And we'll have a joint representation. They can call on us for anything that they need, but we aren't going to overthink it the way we usually would.
Just to kind of summarize that, that was a great answer. It's almost like the quality of your service, and more importantly, the results that you've gotten for your clients have been your best marketing tactic, because that is ultimately what's going to keep your referral partners extremely happy and entrusting you with every case that they send your way. Obviously, I'm sure it takes a new referral partner a while to kind of understand, all right, these are the types of cases that, the firm's going to accept. But once they get that first check or second check, they realize that their clients, are getting the best quality service possible, right? And so that in and of itself has been the best marketing tactic for your firm.
And nurturing your relationships with your referring partners, explaining to them what it is that you're doing and why, so that they begin to get invested in that. And so what I'll get is someone will send me who sends me a lot of birth injury cases will realize that I'm going to say no to even most of those, and those can be catastrophic kinds of injuries. They know I will look at every one of them, and that when I say no, there'll be a reason. I'll have looked at records. There'll be page markers on the records that I think are fatal to a particular case, and I will give it back to them in a way that they can take it to somebody else. And if that person has a different view, we always tell them we're happy to be wrong about the cases we decline. What we don't want to be wrong about are the cases that we take.
Yep, exactly. You just mentioned nurturing referral relationships. I wanted to ask you, how are you doing that, operationally at the firm? Do you have a dedicated person there who kind of spearheads the relationship development? Is that being something that's shared responsibility across, the different partners at the firm? How are you handling that?
It's a shared responsibility, and it's a personal responsibility. We try to meet with the people that refer us cases. We want to know about them and their families in the same way that we know about our clients. We actively try to participate in their charitable operations, because a lot of people do a lot of good work around the Valley. And so we encourage that. We sit on boards of various charitable organizations. One partner, Terry Rowe, sits on the disciplinary committee of the state bar. So we try and have a good relationship with the state bar. And those lawyers tend to refer cases as well, because they know what we do from seeing somebody on a regular basis doing something pro bono, just because it's the right thing to do. And your referral partners appreciate that. When they have a golf tournament, even if you don't like golf, we'll go play golf, once or twice a year, just to get out of the office and go do something with a referral partner.
Can you talk about, I want to talk about pivotal moments across the last 15 years of the firm. Are there any specific moments that significantly impacted the trajectory of your practice? Was there a specific case or a specific hire that really helped you unlock more growth or further define your positioning? And if so, can you talk a little bit about that?
Nursing home work has significantly changed our practice and has been the growth area for us for the last 15 years. Back in the 80s, Arizona did a progressive thing and passed the Adult Protective Services Act and created these claims for elder abuse and neglect. I handled some of the first of those on an appointment from a judge, and we were actually focused on the financial type of exploitation and abuse. And the first defendants were lawyer defendants. They weren't care facilities. But the experience of that and dealing with those cases ultimately led to people referring us and offering us nursing cases, elder abuse cases involving bed sores, involving falls, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, people who elope from memory care facilities. We've had 4 cases in the last 5 years related to those frozen peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and elders choking on them because many have noted swallowing issues before going into a facility, and then the care that they get is quick and sloppy, and they get provided food that they shouldn't and choke. And so that area has just continued to grow for us, and it has an almost opposite success rate from medical malpractice cases, which are notoriously difficult to win in our environment. Juries are still pro-doctor in Arizona. We use the same kind of skills, the medical skills, the evaluation skills in nursing home cases that we do in medical malpractice cases, but they're simply more highly successful. And part of it is we've spent the time to learn the regulations that make a difference in nursing home cases, and regulations like that don't exist in the medical practice world. So it's more touchy-feely in proving that a doctor has committed malpractice, whereas we can point to regulations in nursing home cases. They are most like trucking cases. Trucking cases are not car cases. They get handled by car crash lawyers, but they're not car crash cases. They're trucking cases. They're regulation cases. And a lot of lawyers handle them and don't bother to learn the regulations. The regulations are where punitive damages are. They're where the aggravation is that's going to make a trucking case with the same injuries worth far more than a car crash case if you do the work. And nursing home cases are like that. They're regulation based.
So did, the firm's evolution to be a more nursing home abuse position practice, did that occur organically, or was that something that was a conscious decision 15 years ago that you've really, executed on, like I said, for the last 15 years?
It's a little bit of both. We started getting one referral source who was referring us a fair number of nursing home cases, and they all were good. And so it now, just because these were actually cases that meet the criteria, that were good cases, and they all happen to be nursing home cases. And so now, we're up to 30, 40% nursing home cases. And then we started seeing the results we were actually getting from them. We weren't having to try the vast majority of them. The success rate was near 100%. And so then we actively started doing, our SEO starts changing, and then nursing home becomes part of the SEO. We started going and speaking at nursing home conferences, and we joined the National Nursing Home Association. And then almost by chance, one of my partners subscribes to a geriatric medicine journal, and it was misdelivered to a doctor who was a professor at the U of A medical school. And she called up and said, "Why is a lawyer reading this magazine?" And we had a conversation, and it led to Gabe Kory and I being appointed as assistant professors at the U of A medical school, which is progressive on their part. Lawyers and doctors don't often interact in that sort of way. There's a presumed hostility there, especially if you do some medical malpractice work as well. But we've been able to overcome that. And we've been doing that for almost 10 years now. We did it last Tuesday, and we had students into our office to do case studies. And those are people that I may not be practicing when they are in the full height of their practice, but those doctors become referral sources, and they refer patients.
Basically, long story short, your unique positioning kind of happened, steadily over time. You started orienting your marketing and your networking activities to be more nursing home abuse focused based on some of those, it sounds like, initial wins 10 to 15 years ago. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, I think that's fair. And it's just, as we did that, those are big cases. They take a lot of work. And so other than a little side trip into trying volume practice for a year, we've never gone off track with that basic increase. We're not, we don't want it to be 100%. It's like yesterday I went in the office and to meet a family with a severe trucking accident, because I still do those. They're still right up my alley. I still got the skill set to do them. And so I don't want, and the firm doesn't want to project that the nursing home is all we do, but it is organically by far now the most of what we do.
Got it. Jeff, this is my last question. I wanted to ask, what advice would you give to solo practitioners or young aspiring attorneys that are just starting out and they're looking to expand their practices or grow their book of business?
I go meet other lawyers. The best way long term to have good business is if you know a lot of people and they're in a position to be able to refer you things if they know that you do it and they know that you will do it well. There's really, the other alternative is you just spend money and you just advertise. But the thing that you lose in that, if you're not talking to other lawyers, especially as solo practitioners or small firm practitioners, is what you can learn from all of those people. We've changed our intakes based on seeing other people's intakes. It's like, oh, that's a really good question. And if we hadn't drilled down to that level and just talking to these folks, we wouldn't have known that. We learn things every day from talking to the people that we talk to. And if you're sitting in an office by yourself, you're not learning. You may get enough work to stay alive, but practicing law gets harder every year. I will vouch for that, having done it 40 years now. And you've got to be learning all the time, not just the law, but how do people do stuff? And going out and introducing yourself to other lawyers is invaluable.
It's great advice. Well, Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. How can our listeners learn more about Miller Kory Rowe LLP?
Well, they can call us. They can find us online at mkrlaw.com, but they can call our office and ask to speak to any one of us. We try and mentor younger lawyers all the time, and we're happy to meet with them. We're happy to share things with them that might make their practice easier. Our main office number is 602-648-4045, and we're happy to hear from new lawyers.
Thank you again, Jeff. To our listeners, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Pareto Legal Podcast. We'll see you next time for another episode.